Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about Knock at the Cabin.
Yes.
Which is M. Night Shyamalan's latest film. We liked his last one, Old.
Mm-hmm.
It was a kind of Twilight Zone-y, sort of self-contained horror. This has very similar kind of feeling to it, I think, in the sense that it's self-contained, it's small, the whole film is a big question about what's going on and is what's happening real. It doesn't have the M. Night Shyamalan thing of the big twist ending that kind of became a real... Well, it was what he was known for very early on with The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, and became kind of a crutch, I think, or something that his films were criticised for, because you were waiting for the twist and they started to become not that satisfying. This doesn't, although it does have a kind of explanation for what's going on. This is about a cabin in the woods. It's your classic horror setup. A family are staying there. 2 dads and a daughter, an adopted daughter. The dads are played by Jonathan Groff as Eric and Ben Aldridge as Andrew. And the daughter is Kristen Cui as Wen. And 4 strangers knock on the door, try and get in. The strangers are led by Leonard, played by Dave Bautista.
Who's top billed.
Yes, yeah, and he basically opens the film because there's this uncomfortable scene between him and Wen where you really don't know why he's approaching her, and you don't know anything. Well, I didn't know anything. I don't think I've seen a trailer.
You felt he was a child molester or something.
That's a question that it's asking, right? And Dave Bautista is obviously a very big, imposing figure. He used to be a wrestler, so the film is kind of inviting. I mean, he's an interesting character. He had the same sort of thing in I think Blade Runner 2049. He opens that film. And he's, again, this huge bloke, but he's kind of genteel, the way he's behaving. And they don't quite match up. And he's very good at playing that kind of that dissonance. He's accompanied by Sabrina, played by Nikki Amuka Bird. Redmond, played by Rupert Grint, who I haven't seen in a film since Harry Potter. I mean, I didn't know he was still acting, really.
Yes, I saw him on stage. He was quite good, yeah.
I think he's good in this.
Yeah, I think he is as well.
And Adrian, played by Abby Quinn. And what becomes clear is that they want to get in, and the reason they want to get in is because they think the apocalypse is coming, and they need this family to sacrifice one of themselves to stop it. I mean, it has the feeling of something like The Box, maybe, which was Richard Kelly directed, which was a family has brought this box and it's got a button in it. If you press the button, someone somewhere in the world dies, and what are you going to do? It has this kind of, it's like a moral question, it's like a thought experiment. What do you do in this situation? Do you believe them if it seems to become real? And you start to believe them. What do you do? Do you sacrifice yourself to save the whole world? It has that feeling, right? And again, I think that's something quite Twilight Zone-y about that, you know. What did you think of it? And spoilers will be coming up.
I mean, I suppose, like Old, or, you know, I liked it. There are many things that I like about it. On the other hand, it also feels kind of quite unsatisfying on some level.
I agree.
It feels thin. So the things that I liked about it were the performers and the whole dynamic of the gay dads, and also the unusualness of the threat. Yeah, so kind of at the end they say this is not a home invasion film, in the sense that really kind of, you know, I mean, these strangers do invade the home, but they're really killing each other, killing themselves until you make a sacrifice or choose to make a sacrifice, because the choice is always theirs. They could choose not to make the sacrifice, right?
Every time they refuse, they sacrifice one of themselves,
and then
bring
some
about a
pestilence comes into the world.
Yeah.
Which they have trouble believing. They think that the TV might be pre-recorded, that things happened earlier and they knew about it. So, you know, part of the film is trying to get this family to believe what these people are saying. I think that's part of the problem in the film for me, right? But, you know, to make this leap of faith into this religious way of thinking. Because I think, obviously, I sometimes make that leap of faith into a film's world, you know, no matter whether it's religious or fantastical or sci-fi. Yeah, but there was something about this film that prevented me from making that leap.
I have the same kind of issue with buying into it, because I'm willing to, you know, and particularly with this kind of movie, I'm willing to, like, you have a crazy premise, I'll go with it, I'll see what it is. I think the issue is that well, it very explicitly divorces its talk of the apocalypse from religion. I think with the scene where Sabrina, who's the nurse, is treating Eric, the Jonathan Groff character, and she talks about like not having gone to church in years. It's nothing to do with that. We just had these visions. And that's the one point in the film where it explicitly says this could have a religious component, but it doesn't. So it's divorcing itself from that, but it doesn't kind of replace it with very much else, I guess. I was reading that M. Night Shyamalan said this was the fastest he'd ever written a script. It made immediate sense to me when I read that, because I thought it is quite thin. I mean, ultimately it comes down to being a family drama, really. It's trying to build it into a family drama. Like, this thing about the reason that these people, it's supposed, are being made the key of stopping the apocalypse, the reason that they have to make the sacrifice is the strength of their love. And the thing is that their love has been tested over the years, or their relationship has been tested because they're gay, they've been attacked for it, they've adopted a daughter that's not the same race as them, although that's not nothing's really made of that, but it's there, it's a component. Like, it would be different, I think, if the daughter were white like they are, but she's not. And as interesting as that could be, again, it never quite makes it. Like, the stuff about the parents not being supportive of the relationship, or not appearing to be, the attack at the bar, that you see these flashbacks, felt quite cliche, and again, quite thin.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind that. I kind of like that in a way, but I just wish they'd layer on more things, because, you know, that is an interesting twist in the film, because part of the reason why they don't believe the story is because the person who attacked them at that bar and caused years of trauma in psychiatry was actually one of the people that presents themselves to convince them to kill a member of their family. Yeah,
the Rupert Grint character.
Yeah. So I think all of those things could have been potentially interesting, but I really liked the dynamic between the characters. I liked that the family is a gay family, and that's meant to be by accident, right? So they're just going to the family in this cabin. They didn't realize.
Yeah, so the visions that these characters have had that have led them there are all about the things that might happen, and you see in the opening credits all these scribblings and stuff, and I think you see the cabin in them as well. Mm-hmm. So they've been drawn there together, but they don't know who they'll find there, and they're very... Dave Bautista again is kind of very clear that this is not a homophobic attack, and we didn't know who you were or who we'd find here, and so on.
I liked that, but I didn't like the way that the gay couple is made to seem so much like, you know, an ordinary couple. Yeah, I think there should have been more that was... Well, maybe it's not even specifically gay. I think maybe if you'd have seen a young family, you know, there would be like more touching, more kind of affection, more sexual
I agree with
interplay.
This.
You know, it felt like it had been overly sanitized. Like, they practically never touch in the whole film. Much less just do things that couples do, like, you know, put your hand around their waist or touch their bum, or, you know, like just those normal affectionate kind of things that have a sexual, you know, that are not about jumping in bed, but then nonetheless establish that there's a sexual, you know, dynamic.
Like you wouldn't see those in the present day story that they're telling, because you know, they're being tied up and everything. But in the flashbacks, you should see that, right?
You should see that.
And actually, and this is big spoiler territory because it's right at the end of the film I'm talking about, when they, you know, the four characters who've invaded have perished, and we've got minutes to go before the apocalypse comes, because it turns out this is all real. And Jonathan Groff is saying, you've got to kill me, and I'm in a happy place, and let me stay there with my thoughts about your future, and so on, save the world. They should kiss then.
Sure.
They should kiss then. You should see it. And actually, it cuts away like it does with most of the other deaths. It just cuts away to the outside of the cabin, and you hear, you know, whatever noise it is of a gunshot, I think.
So in many ways, this is a gutsy, gutless film.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you could say, oh, the premise is kind of gutsy. But actually, everything they do with it is completely gutless. And... you know, that annoyed me. I also think that the film was in bad faith, right? That actually, if you really think about the moral and ethical issues, you know, that people might be confronted with in a situation like that, one of them that I think should have been put at the forefront, and the film just lacks the guts to do that, is the killing of the child. Right? You know,
the question is really only, if it is raised at all, which of the parents will die.
That's right. Whereas you would think, okay, and by the way, I don't condone any of this, but you do think that the logical things that might go through their minds is, we've adopted this child, we can adopt another, kind of, and I'm not...
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, the thing is, if characters are being put under this kind of stress and pressure, initially they're just dismissing it, but as they start to believe it, the desperation, you would think, has to raise that question, even for the split second, and then they dismiss it and go, no, it's inhumane, we can't do that.
And exactly, you could then do all kinds of interesting things with it, make them feel guilty, or ashamed, or embarrassed, or, there's a lot of kind of, I suppose, normal human emotion that could come out of that, but the film doesn't even go there at all.
I tell you what is actually, I think it's a key issue with the film is the characters, the family, never believe this enough until right at the very end, when they have this minute to make their decision, basically. The whole time they're going, I don't believe this is bollocks, and you do understand why, right? It's crazy that what they're being told, and the people who are telling them this aren't giving them that much to go on. One of the things that was kind of annoying me throughout the opening kind of movement of the film is while they're having this conversation with the invaders, before they've told them this apocalypse story, they never ask, why do you want to come in? That's the first thing I'll be asking. What they ask is, how many of you are there? Why have you got weapons? Because they can see through the window. But they don't ask, why do you want to come in? That's such a natural question to ask. And it's the film kind of artificially putting that question off, I think, for a while. Yeah. But the thing is that if you want to get to the point where you're asking these questions about what do you do, which family member do you kill, do you consider killing the child, you need to have more time where they actually believe that this is real. And the film doesn't do that. The film spends all their time with just them being sceptical of it. And that's a problem, because you think the questions that the film could have interesting discussions about, or interesting drama about, it's not allowing itself to approach those because the characters just don't buy it.
Yeah. So it has all kinds of problems with it. I did like certain things, actually. So for example, I really like David Bautista in it. The child is beautiful and has a very haunting presence. She feels both very immediate, and then she's got a kind of, a fairy-like face as well. That kind of fits in with the film in a way. I really like the child. I have mixed feelings about Jonathan Groff, right? So I like that he's chubby, and sweet, and doesn't take his clothes off, and that he's kind of slightly femme. I like all of that. It did feel sometimes that the performance was a little bit too cliche-ish. That the responses were cliche-ish, even with the kissing of the child and so on. But I liked him, and I liked the interplay with, is it Ben Kingsley?
No, Ben Aldridge.
Ben Aldridge. But I think it's a really minor, thin film that I had a good time at.
Yeah, the main reason that I was having a good time throughout is I want to know the answers, right? I want to know what's going on.
It's very good at that.
The film is keeping you questioning all the time. And I agree with what you say about the quality of the performances and the interplay between the characters, and particularly the way Dave Bautista is in control of the whole thing. His character is smartly conceived, and he plays it so well.
Also, I don't think M. Night Shyamalan is given enough credit for the way that he composes scenes. The shots are always interesting. Yeah, the way that he uses focus, the foreground, the background, the way he sometimes splits screens in two, with one just being an object that blocks everything. It's always interesting. And I enjoy that element.
I'm glad you said that, because I said the same thing when we talked about Old, and it's something I basically have always thought about in that Shyamalan, that even if it's not necessarily effective, or you don't see what the effect is, or maybe you don't feel it achieves it, he always is trying to make something that's visually interesting. He's not just plonking down a camera and doing two shots and things. He always is looking for an interesting, motivated composition, motivated camera move, and things like that. I mean, the opening of this film, all these close-ups at this Dutch angle between Dave Bautista and Kristen Cui when they're talking, is you don't have to shoot it like that, right? You can shoot in two shots, you can shoot more conventionally, but it's these extreme close-ups between the two of them going back and forth that really focus your attention and really intensify the scene. Actually, although I must say, overall, I think one of the things that the film lacks, which I think it would benefit from, is intensity. I think it could do with more tension. I think, when it comes to the sacrifices, so Dave Bautista asks the big question, will you sacrifice yourself? And they say no. And that's when one of the four will die. And they sacrifice themselves and then bring about this plague. I think the film is never tense enough when that's happening as to what they'll say, what the consequences will be, and so on.
Yeah, and the manner of death, and and how it's shown. I mean, it's trying to be tactful. Was actually what I would have liked is also a bit more gruesomeness.
Yeah,
I mean, it's that kind of film, and it can be made meaningful. So it can be made like obviously exciting, and gruesome and meaningful. I think the film was overly tactful in all that, and actually not stylish enough. Yes, I mean, they have all of these seemingly like medieval weapons. Why don't you do something with that?
Yeah,
it would have lent itself visually to such interesting things, right? So
yeah. The film is constantly cutting away from those murders, and then you'll cut back when you see a body being dragged out. Or the first one with Rupert Grint, it built up fairly effectively actually with Rupert Grint, because it's the first one we're going to see, and we don't know what's going to happen, what they're going to do. But then at the crucial point of the murder, where they bash him in the head with these giant weapons, the film's cut away from that, and then you cut back to see his body fall to the ground with these weapons stuck in his head.
A narrative dimension of the Rupert Grint story that I thought was underdeveloped, or just given up, or just not shown, was, since he was this man who'd attacked Ben Aldridge.
Yeah, Ben Aldridge.
There should have been an emotional resolution to that. There should have been a kind of, an apology or a regret, or, instead... it's not acknowledged. It's brought up by the character after he's dead.
It's avoided by the Rupert Grint character while he's alive, because they do this thing of like a self-help group, kind of saying, "Hi, my name's so and so, and this is about me." And they're trying to. This is the four invaders are trying to introduce themselves to the family and share why they're here and so on. And Rupert Grint is reluctant to do that. And when he's sort of forced into it by Dave Bautista, he says, "I did time," and he's saying things like, "I did things I wasn't proud of, but I'm a different man now." And that's as close as he could get to saying, "I know you and I did this."
Yes.
But of course he doesn't, and then he dies before that has a chance to be actually talked to.
I think that could have been worked in a very different way that had more emotional resonance.
Yeah, because all you get is Andrew, the dad who was attacked by him, after his death saying, "I knew I recognised him from somewhere, but his name is different to the one he's given." Dave Bautista says, "No, I don't think you're right. That's not his name." And the resolution is that he goes and gets his ID and shows him, "Yes, that is his name. I was right." It's not much of a resolution. It's not enough.
No, I mean, I would have liked regret, remorse, kind of. It's a situation that has emotional depths that are not plumbed.
But even if it plays out as it does, and Rupert Grint dies too early for that to be resolved with him. Even the getting of the ID and the proving that I was right doesn't have anything to it. It's just, I was right. Yeah, I proved it. Fuck you. It's not again, not enough. It's too weak, too thin. The film does have an interesting, I said that it's explicitly denying that it's got a religious component, but of course the explanation that I alluded to that's given at the end, which is it's an interpretation that the Jonathan Groff character gives as to who these people are and why they're there, is that they're the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is Christian. Which is interesting, because it also made sense of the knocks on the door, because I noticed there were 7 knocks on the door. It's only because they're quite deliberate, and then also because I stayed to the end of the credits and you hear them again. There's 7 of them, and I think relates to the 7 seals, which is the opening of the 7 seals on the Book of Revelation, I think. And the first 4 of those seals relate to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are what? War, famine, pestilence, or conquest. I think it's vague, and death. And the way they're interpreted here is as kind of opposites. Because it was interesting. So Jonathan Groff says these are kind of aspects of humanity. So he talks about the Rupert Grint character being malice. The nurse character
being healing, The cook.
Yeah, the line cook and mother being nurture, and the Dave Bautista character being guidance. He's a teacher, and he's obviously in charge of this group. So you're thinking, well, those aren't the four horsemen of the apocalypse, because then he says these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Like, no, they're fucking not. Right? But they kind of play as opposites, right? So I guess malice, or at least the attempt, I suppose, by Rupert Grint's character, so he says, to improve, can be seen as an opposite to war, or relation to war. Healing would be the opposite of death, I would say.
Yeah.
The nurture character, who we see in a specific scene feeding the daughter, having cooked for her, and we know she's a cook, would be the opposite of famine. And then I think it's a little vaguer, probably, with Dave Bautista, as guidance being the opposite of pestilence or conquest.
Interesting to speculate that this is similar material that Bergman used for The Seventh Seal.
Yeah. Which I've never seen.
It's wonderful.
And I imagine this film is probably, in most people's
Very
minds,
distant from it.
a bit different from it. And I suppose the question is, like, it's interesting that the film is raising this, but to what end is it interesting enough? It feels like trivia, basically, I mean, the question of what should this family do and so on, those aren't the interesting questions. The question of, are these people representatives of figures from the Book of Revelation and so on, is not that interesting, and I don't see it contributing to the film that deeply. It feels trivial. Although it is kind of interesting. It's there to recognise, and the characters do bring it up. I don't know. I suppose I like, at least, that the film goes as far as to clarify that it is real, that the apocalypse is coming. And, I mean, this will be a spoiler for a certain Alex Proyas film from 2009. What I like about the film knowing is that when the film promises the apocalypse, it fucking gives you the apocalypse in that film, right? Like, it's not a great film by any means, but I had an enormous amount of fun with it. And one of the things is that it has the courage of its convictions to end with the apocalypse. This film approaches it and then steers you away.
No, I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, I think
the
threat was the apocalypse, but the avoidance was the whole kind of point. Yeah. So,
well, I suppose that it does have this question, because Dave Bautista is always saying, if you don't choose, if you refuse, then the apocalypse will come. Everyone, all 7 billion people on Earth, will be killed, and you three will be left to wander the world for the rest of your days, cosmic entities or something. And so, and of course, what I'm thinking there is, in a film like this, I would really like to see that happen. I would like to see everything just fucking fail.
Well, no, I wasn't thinking in those terms. But it had kind of a religious inevitability about it, which felt false anyway, because, like if you watch The Seventh Seal, it's imbued within a whole Christian understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And just go with it. This, I don't think even the film is buying into it, except as a kind of a concept, really.
Yeah.
And so, that whole thing remains very thin. The relationship between the characters remain thin. How did these people get a vision? How did they come together? That whole background remains kind of thin as well.
Yeah.
So kind of unsatisfying, even though fun to see.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anything about the film.
Me neither. I just knew it had a gay family. That was the drawing card for me.
I didn't know that. I just knew it was M. Night Shyamalan, and he'd done a Cabin in the Woods film, and obviously the Cabin in the Woods is your classic horror sort of setup. There's literally a film that deals with that trope and all the other horror tropes called The Cabin in the Woods. But I didn't know what to expect, and I would certainly say, like, this is not really a horror film. It's a drama, and a kind of interesting sort of psycho-fantastical family drama. But it's not rich enough in any way. And I think it will be much less satisfying if you watch it again, because one of the things that is satisfying about it is that I like not knowing where the film's going. Now that I do, that will no longer hold, excitement or intrigue for me. And I don't know that there's enough in it to get out a second time. So I think it's a bit of a misfire. Which is a shame, because I really like M. Night Shyamalan, and I'm always interested to see what he'll do, what his next film is.
I'm interested in him, and I will go see the next one.
Yeah.
And I recommend people watch this one
If we haven't spoiled it for you enough.
Yeah. And if if it happens to be on Netflix or whatever, by all means have a look. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. It's a nice one where everyone gets their head stuck.
It's really nice. It's just not good.
Yeah, not great.
Anyway, thank you very much for listening. We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.